Subianto takes oath as Indonesia's 8th president. Israel continues relentless pounding of Gaza. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priya, and you're watching World Today. Indonesia's Prabowo Subianto on Sunday took over as president of the world's third largest democracy after sweeping the country's election with policies like free meals for school children and with the outgoing leader's son as his running mate. The inauguration ceremony was attended by several foreign dignitaries, including about 20 heads of state, including Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, and East Timor's Prime Minister Xanana Gusmao.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Demi Allah, saya bersumpah akan memenuhi kewajipan Presiden Republik Indonesia dengan sebaik-baiknya dan seadil-adilnya.
The 73-year-old former Special Forces commander won the 14th February contest with nearly 60% of the vote and has spent the past 9 months building a formidable parliamentary coalition. Past allegations against Prabowo of involvement in the kidnapping of activists and human rights abuses in Papua and East Timor, however, have also raised concern about Indonesia's trajectory of democracy. Prabowo has always denied the allegations that led to his dismissal from the military in 1998, the same year Indonesia broke free from the decades-long authoritarian rule of former President Suharto. Later, Prabowo took over the country's presidential palace in a handover ceremony with outgoing President Joko Widodo following his swearing-in ceremony on Sunday. The 73-year-old waved through a car's sunroof as he made his way to the presidential palace, passing thousands of flag-waving supporters thronging Jakarta's streets in a festival-like atmosphere. Hassan Nazmi, the head of the Presidential Communications Organization, said Prabowo is expected to meet with foreign dignitaries, including a number of heads of state, later at the palace. After the ceremony, Prabowo rode together with Widodo, or more popularly known as Jokowi, to the military airport, where the former president will depart to his hometown, Solo. Jokowi left an indelible mark of strong economic growth and massive infrastructure development. However, critics noted his rule as marked by a rise in old-time patronage and dynastic politics, and they warned about a diminished integrity in courts and other state institutions. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who took over office this month, faces a challenging situation of keeping a lower house majority during the general election on Sunday, the first to be held since 2021. The 67-year-old's successful leadership bid after 4 failed attempts puts the self-professed lone wolf at the helm of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, which has been in power for most of the past 70 years. Ishiba takes over LDP in a crisis, having seen its public support fade over the past 2 years, with revelations of links to a church branded a cult by critics and a scandal over unrecorded donations. As a former defense minister who entered parliament in 1986 after a short banking career, Ishiba was sidelined by previous premiers, including his predecessor Fumio Kishida, becoming instead a dissenting voice in the party. He has rebelled on policies, including the increased use of nuclear energy, and criticized his party for not allowing married couples to use separate surnames. Days after Japan's parliament formally confirmed him as the new prime minister, Ishiba instructed his cabinet to compile a fresh stimulus package that would cushion the blow from rising living costs. On the other hand, Yoshihiko Noda, the new leader of Japan's largest opposition party, the Constitutional Democratic Party, CDP, is leading the battle against the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, to win more seats in the lower house election on Sunday. The 67-year-old has criticized the LDP for its recent money scandals and called for a change of government. A poll by broadcaster TBS released on 16th October showed the LDP may lose about 30 seats, while their coalition partner, Komeito, may shed a small number. A separate poll of more than 150,000 people, published by Kyodo, also pointed to challenges for the LDP to secure a majority. Noda, known as an eloquent lawmaker, has gained popularity among Japan's unaffiliated voters, who often prove decisive in elections. Noda is from Chiba Prefecture near Tokyo. Since 1993, he has been elected 9 times in the lower house. He served as Prime Minister between 2011 and 2012 under the Democratic Party of Japan, which no longer exists as a party. Elsewhere, Moldovans on Sunday voted in a presidential election and European Union referendum at a pivotal moment that could bolster the country's drive to join the European Union after allegations of Russian election meddling. As the war in Ukraine rages to the east and turns the political and diplomatic spotlight on the former Soviet Republic, it has accelerated its push to escape Moscow's orbit and embarked on the long process of EU accession talks. Polls show pro-Western incumbent Maya Sandu has a comfortable lead over her 10 rivals on the ballot, though the race will go to a runoff if she fails to reach the 50% threshold to win outright. She is likely to face Alexander Stoyanoglu, a former prosecutor general backed by the traditionally pro-Russian Party of Socialists, if the vote goes to a second round. Polls show a majority support joining the 27-nation bloc, though 5 of the candidates have told their supporters to vote no or boycott, saying the timing of the referendum is a ruse to boost Sandu's haul at the election. Flanked by Romania and Ukraine, the nation of under 3 million people has alternated between pro-Western and pro-Russian causes since the 1991 Soviet breakup. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Sunday cancelled his trip to Russia for the BRICS summit following medical advice to temporarily avoid long-haul flights after hurting his head in an accident at home. In a statement, the presidential office said Lula, who was initially scheduled to depart on Sunday, will now participate in the BRICS meeting via video conference. According to a medical report issued by the Syrio-Lebanese hospital in Brasilia, Lula was advised to avoid long-distance air travel, but is otherwise able to carry out his regular duties. The report added that Lula suffered a laceration to the occipital region in the back of his head. It was reported that the Brazilian president now has 5 stitches because of the accident. The 78-year-old leader was scheduled to attend a summit of the BRICS bloc of fast-growing economies in the Russian city of Kazan, which runs from Tuesday to Thursday. The diplomatic forum, founded 15 years ago by major emerging markets Brazil, Russia, India, China, has since expanded to include South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. At least 90 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit several multi-story buildings overnight in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the number killed includes 27 bodies retrieved so far and 60 people under the rubble. The ministry said more than 40 people had been injured, including a number of very critical cases. Graphic footage showed the bodies of several children among the dead, many with extensive injuries. Overnight footage showed rescue workers combing through tons of rubble in the search for survivors and victims. Kamal Adwan Hospital Director Hussam Abu Safia on Sunday said a large number of people have been killed and injured and transferred to the hospital amid a severe shortage of medical staff and supplies. Kamal added that many of the injured are facing the risk of death due to the inability to treat them. He also said that the area around the hospital is coming under bombardment and direct gunfire. Dr. Mahir Shamia from the hospital said that staff were working under pressure, under fear, under destruction, and under injuries. The United Nations Special Coordinator for the Peace Process in the Middle East, Thor Wenslan, also expressed horror at the airstrike, saying that the nightmare in Gaza is intensifying. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the conscription of 133,000 new servicemen in Russia's autumn draft that started on the 1st of October and goes on till the end of the year. First conscripts on Sunday left the southern Russian town of Bataysk in Rostov region for bases of their military service. Chief Enlistment Officer of Rostov region, Igor Igorov, said that although recruits will serve in all branches and types of troops, they will not be sent to the zone of the special military operation and to the border regions where military actions are taking place. Russia calls its war in Ukraine, which it started with a full-scale invasion in February 2022, a special military operation. Kyiv and its allies call it an unprovoked imperialistic attempt to grab land. In a move condemned by most of the Western world, Russia annexed parts of the southeastern Ukraine in late 2022, calling the land new regions. Citing growing threats on Russia's western borders, Putin in September ordered the Russian army to be increased by 180,000 troops to 1.5 million active servicemen, a move that would make it the second largest in the world after China's. Next, one dead in northern Italy after heavy rainfall leaves towns flooded. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres on Sunday appealed to nations gathered at a biodiversity summit in the Colombian city of Cali for significant investment in a fund set up to conserve and restore nature. The investment is needed in the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, or GBFF, and commitments to mobilize other sources of public and private finance.
But we are not on track.
The GBFF was created last year to help countries achieve the goals of the so-called Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, adopted in Canada in 2022, with 23 targets to halt and reverse the loss of nature by 2030. So far, countries have made about $250 million in commitments to the fund, according to agencies monitoring progress. The fund is part of a broader agreement made 2 years ago for countries to mobilize at least $200 billion per year by 2030 for biodiversity, including of $20 billion per year from rich nations by 2025 to help the developing world. Guterres highlighted that destroying nature increases conflict over resources, hunger, and disease, and fuels poverty. He reminded those profiting from nature must be the ones to contribute to its protection and restoration. A boat loaded with more than 100 Rohingya refugees was spotted off Indonesia's westernmost province, with at least one dead body seen on board. Community leader Muhammad Jabal said the Rohingya boat is anchored around 5 to 6 kilometers off the coast of South Aceh district, with its engine turned off. Jabal said the boat was first seen on Friday when he and others set off to deliver food and water to the refugees, estimating more than 100 were on board. The day before the sighting of the boat, the body of a Rohingya woman was found at sea. Local police chief Sabda Man Sobri confirmed that she was a member of the ethnic group, but could not comment on whether she was connected to the boat. Yuhelmi, a South Aceh district spokesperson, confirmed the boat sighting but said locals were waiting for an immigration team from provincial capital Banda Aceh to arrive before deciding the next step for the refugees. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, said it had been informed by local authorities about the vessel and hoped the refugees would be rescued immediately. Many residents in Aceh are sympathetic to the plight of the Rohingya, but some locals have opposed their arrivals, accusing members of anti-social behavior. Cities in Emilia-Romagna, a city and region in northern Italy, are faced with devastating flooding after heavy rainfall over the weekend. According to Italy's Fire and Rescue Service, a man died when his vehicle was trapped in floodwaters in Bottegino di Zocca. Videos from various cities in the area show how significant the flooding was. Residents of Licata, Sicily, woke up on Sunday counting the damage from the heavy rainfall that caused severe flooding and landslides. As the weather conditions were improving, residents started to tidy up their houses and streets while the damage count began. The mayor of Licata, Angelo Balsalmo, said the damage caused by the floods was severe, particularly in the agricultural sector. The president of Sicily, Renato Schifani, has convened the regional government to assess the damage due to the extreme weather and allocate the first resources for emergency interventions. In Campaign, 2 dogs stuck in an animal shelter were saved by the Fire and Rescue Service on Sunday. The firefighting agency also said that 515 rescues had been conducted since midnight on Saturday. Millions of Cubans awoke on Sunday to find their homes still without power after another partial grid failure overnight, deepening a crisis that has raised questions over the viability of the government's efforts to re-establish electrical service. The country's top electricity official, Lazaro Guerra, confirmed a partial grid collapse in the western provinces of Cuba, which includes Havana, late on Saturday. A timeline for when power would be restored to the region has not been provided. The capital of nearly 2 million residents appeared to be entirely without electricity early on Sunday, as many Cubans formed lines for subsidized rations and mulled the situation outside their homes. A third grid failure late on Saturday marked a major setback in the government's efforts to quickly restore power to exhausted residents already suffering from severe shortages of food, medicine, and fuel. The media witnessed 2 small protests overnight after a grid failure left Havana in the dark late Saturday, one of the outskirts of the capital in Mariano and the other in the more central Cuatro Caminos. Various videos of protests elsewhere in the capital also began to crop up on social media late on Saturday. Former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo, who faces corruption charges in the case involving the Brazilian company Odebrecht, is set to be sentenced later today. The Odebrecht case is a major corruption scandal that revolves around the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht, which has admitted to paying bribes to government officials across Latin America to secure contracts. The scandal prompted extensive investigations and legal actions against numerous political and business figures in various countries, including Toledo, who served as president of Peru from 2001 to 2006. A former Odebrecht executive alleged that Toledo had requested a bribe and provided evidence to support the claim. Peruvian authorities accused Toledo of receiving $35 million in bribes from Odebrecht in exchange for awarding the construction contract for the Inter-Oceania Highway. Toledo denies the corruption allegations by prosecutors, which include charges of money laundering and collusion. Toledo was arrested in the United States in July 2019 and was extradited to Peru in 2023, where he has remained in prison. Prosecutors have requested a 20-year prison sentence for him. Liverpool pass a Chelsea test with Jones winner. Malaysia's Young Tigers lost 4-1 to Japan in their second Sultan of Johor Cup match at the Johor Hockey Stadium in Johor Bahru last night. Both teams looked equally matched in the first and second quarters of the match, with Malaysia failing to capitalize on the 4 penalty corners they were awarded. To Malaysia's credit, Adam Ashraf managed to score the first goal of the match through a field goal in the 35th minute, but it was not long before the Japanese equalized through Hyota Yamada with a penalty stroke 4 minutes later. Spurred on, Japan kept up the attacks and scored their second with a field goal by Yuto Higuchi in the 43rd minute, followed by another field goal by Yamato Kawahara in the 48th minute, and finally a penalty corner by Koyo Nishida 3 minutes later. In earlier matches yesterday, India beat Great Britain 6-4, while Australia and New Zealand drew 2-2. Malaysia will play India next on Tuesday. Japan will take on Australia, while New Zealand will play Great Britain. The national junior hockey squad is playing against 5 other countries in the 12th edition of the Cup, which will end on the 26th of October. And in the English Premier League, Liverpool passed their biggest test of the season so far as Curtis Jones struck the winner in a 2-1 home victory over Chelsea to keep them top of the Premier League early this morning. The 23-year-old's first goal since January proved the difference in a tight battle as Liverpool won for the 10th time in 11 matches in all competitions under new boss Arne Slot. Mohamed Salah's 29th minute penalty put the hosts in front against the run of play, but Chelsea levelled after the break as Nicholas Jackson was played through to score. Chelsea were not level for long, though, as midfielder Jones got on the end of Salah's low cross to beat visiting keeper Robert Sanchez from close range. It was never comfortable for Liverpool against a Chelsea side who came close to an equaliser several times in a strong finish and ended up with more attempts at goal. But Slot's side dug deep to pass their sternest test in the Premier League so far this season. They have 21 points from 8 games, one more than second-placed Manchester City, who beat Wolverhampton Wanderers 2-1 earlier. Chelsea stayed in 6th place with 14 points. The visit from Enzo Maresca's buoyant Chelsea side was the first in a devilish run of fixtures for Liverpool that continues at Arsenal next weekend. Elsewhere, Neymar took part in team training and will join the Al Hilal squad for their Asian Champions League trip to UAE Pro League club Al Ain after recovering from a serious knee injury. The 32-year-old Brazil forward has not played since sustaining an injury during his nation's Commonwealth World Cup qualifier against Uruguay in October last year. The Saudi Pro League club said Neymar suffered an anterior cruciate ligament or ACL injury and underwent surgery in November. Having moved to Saudi Arabia from French champion Paris Saint-Germain for a reported fee of around 90 million euros in August last year, Neymar had only played 5 games before his layoff as he was struggling with muscle injuries. The former Barcelona forward, who is Brazil's leading scorer, missed their 2024 Copa America campaign in the United States, where they suffered a second straight quarterfinal exit from a major tournament after losing to Croatia on penalties at the 2022 World Cup. Neymar's Al Hilal will play Al Ain at the Hazza bin Zayed Stadium in UAE tomorrow. And in tennis, Spanish veteran Roberto Bautista Agut beat Czech 5th seed Jiří Lehecka in straight sets in the pair's 3rd meeting in the last 6 weeks to win the European Open in Antwerp on Sunday. The 36-year-old Spaniard, a former top 10 player now down at 60 in the world, edged out his 33rd ranked rival from the Czech Republic 7-5, 6-1. Bautista Agut had seen off Lehecka in the Davis Cup in September before the Czech gained revenge with a second-round win at the Beijing tournament. Bautista Agut is the second oldest men's champion on the tour in 2024 after 37-year-old Novak Djokovic claimed Olympic gold in Paris in August. The win was Bautista Agut's 12th ATP Tour title of his career and first since triumphing in Kitzbühel on the clay in 2022. Meanwhile, in Sweden, 4th seeded Tommy Paul topped Grigor Dimitrov, the 3rd seed 6-4, 6-3 on Sunday to win his second BNP Paribas Nordic Open in Stockholm. Paul captured his first ATP Tour Championship in 2021 in the Swedish capital. Sunday's title is his 3rd of the season, and he didn't lose a set throughout the week. He won in 85 minutes, defeating the Bulgarian to earn his 4th top 10 victory of 2024. Paul struck 19 winners and 14 unforced errors, compared to 9 and 13, respectively, for Dimitrov. The American is in good company when it comes to players with at least 3 season tour wins, joining world number 1 Jannik Sinner and his fellow Italian Matteo Berrettini, as well as number 2 Carlos Alcaraz of Spain. Elsewhere in Kazakhstan, Karen Khachanov was forced to take the scenic route on Sunday, but did so in dramatic fashion to clinch his 7th ATP Tour title at the Almaty Open. In a pendulum-swinging contest, the third seed resisted a late fight back to defeat Gabriel Diallo 6-2, 5-7, 6-3. Khachanov appeared to have one hand in the trophy when he led by a set and a break, but Diallo mustered some gutsy tennis to level the contest from the brink of defeat and ignite hopes of a comeback. The 23-year-old showed grit to go toe-to-toe with the world number 26, but ultimately faltered in a one-sided decider. Despite going the distance in both his semi-final against Alexander Vukic and the championship match, Khachanov was relentless in his approach. He was particularly dialed in on return in the showdown, creating 19 breakpoint opportunities against the explosive serving of Diallo. According to Infosys ATP stats, Khachanov won 92% of points behind his first serve in a lights-out first set. He then kept his foot on the gas to dismantle Diallo's serve in the third game of the second set to earn a commanding lead. However, trailing by a set and 2-4, Diallo showed resilience to save 5 breakpoints in a 15-minute game, shifting the momentum firmly in his favor. Buoyed by the crowd, both players raised their levels, but it was Khachanov who stood firm to seal victory in 2 hours, 23 minutes. And that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, Prabowo Subianto takes oath as Indonesia's 8th president. Now we leave you with visuals from New York's 2024 Comic-Con, where thousands of enthusiastic fans donned elaborate costumes representing their favorite comic book heroes, movie icons, and video game characters. Till then, I'm Mohana Priya from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thank you for your company.